Back in Athens, Greece to speak at an incubator, listen to some startup pitches, and of course get some baklava and Greek coffee. But let's get into this. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you.
To maintain your independence, you must always be needed and wanted. The more you are relied on, the more freedom you have. Make people depend on you for their happiness and prosperity, and you have nothing to fear. Never teach them enough so that they can do without you. Greene starts this law with the stories of two Italian mercenaries who were victorious in every battle. In the case of the first mercenary, the people of the town thought that there was nothing they could do to possibly repay him for his duty and bravery.
They even thought that the title of Lord of the City would not be enough for him.
One citizen came up with the brilliant idea of, let us kill him, and then we can worship him as our patron saint. And that's exactly what they did. As for the second mercenary, he was welcomed home like a true war hero for defending the city. However, when he was escorted to the palace for dinner, he was actually escorted to the dungeon. The following day, he was beheaded in the center plaza in front of a confused crowd.
Greene explains their terrible fates as simply being replaceable.
The author notes that the mercenaries were becoming more powerful and wanted more money for their services. So why not kill them to rid yourself of any threat and just hire a replacement mercenary who is younger, fresher, and less expensive?
Sounds like corporate life, right? When you train the younger guy just to have him replace you.
Greene then tells the story of Otto von Bismarck, a deputy in the Prussian parliament who had no allies or friends, but decided to become friends with the king, Frederick William IV, a strange person to align himself with because the king was at a low point in his power. The king was an indecisive man with no backbone, something that Bismarck actually detested, but he was always by the king's side. One day, Bismarck was made a minister in the king's cabinet, and this is when he took full advantage of his new position and became the true force behind the king. Bismarck basically told him to man up, worked on the king's insecurity, and wrapped the king around his finger.
When the king died and his brother William took over, it was the same story.
The new king had countless enemies, but Bismarck stood by him, provided him with the belief in himself, and pushed William into strong positions. What's funny is that King William initially did not like Bismarck but grew dependent on him. He actually needed him to thwart off his enemies and eventually made Bismarck his prime minister. This is when it went up a notch. When Bismarck wouldn't get his way with policies, he threatened to quit and the king would stand down. Because of this, all of the state's policy was set by Bismarck. When the German state became united into one country, Bismarck persuaded William into moving on up from king to the Emperor of Germany. With William as the emperor, Bismarck eventually became the imperial chancellor, a knighted prince, and called all the shots. Dude was a straight-up gangster. Greene asserts that this was a very intelligent play on Bismarck's end. Obviously, to team up with someone powerful makes you dispensable, but with someone weak who has position, you can create a relationship of dependence because you can become their power, strategist, and backbone.
If you left, the whole building would crumble. Oh, what a place to be in.
The author tells another story, one of King Louis XI, who completely relied on astrology. One day, his court astrologer predicted that a woman would die within 8 days. And when she did, the king became worried because he either had the lady killed to show that he was a great astrologer, or that he was so good that it was a threat to the king himself. One day, the king told his guards that when the astrologer is called up to his room tonight, he'll give a sign, and they'll pick up the astrologer and throw him out the window to his death. When the astrologer entered the room that night, the king asked, "Tell me what your fate will be and how long you have to live." He replied, this is so funny, "I shall die just 3 days before your majesty." Of course, the king never gave the sign. Way to think on your toes, dude.
For the rest of the king's life, he gave the astrologer the best protection, gifts, and doctors. Of course, in order to preserve his own life, he had to preserve the astrologers.
He would actually live several years longer than King Louis, showing that he didn't have the power of telling the future, but he sure did have power over the king. Greene states that the best way to make others dependent on you is to have a skill or talent that can't be replaced. But don't think that this dependence will make your master love you. He will probably resent you and be scared of you, but remember what Machiavelli said. It is better to be feared than loved. And when your master is scared of having you leave, you win.
Greene does cite J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller, though, as two individuals who had complete control with no master.
But Greene said that this kind of independence comes with a steep price for many reasons, such as deep resentment towards you, your enemies joining forces against you, which you don't want, or even people from your own ranks destroying the organization. He says the stress with being on top is not as good as having the master above you essentially be your slave, because he will always have to depend on you.
There's not much more for me to add because I've been saying this for years, way before I even read this.
Before owning my own business, I was fired from nearly every job I had. Each firing had its own reasons, but one common variable was because I was replaceable. If I was highly specialized, I would have been untouchable, or close to it, but how rare is that to achieve? All I knew was that if I was to ever rejoin the workforce, I would need a skill that would make me absolutely vital to an organization, or my days would be numbered. But the downside to also being highly specialized is if your role or industry becomes obsolete, you become obsolete.
So as of late, I've been telling people to be generalists as well as specialists with the ever-changing workplace.
How? Well, by having a wide range of knowledge and information, but being able to deep dive in certain arenas. Then I came across an article that exactly spoke about this, being, as the term is coined, an expert generalist. Basically, as one website describes it, someone who has the ability and curiosity to master and collect expertise in many different disciplines, industries, skills, capabilities, countries, and topics, etc. He or she can then, without necessarily even realizing it, but often by design, 1. Draw on that palette of diverse knowledge to recognize patterns and connect the dots across multiple areas, and 2. Drill deep to focus and perfect the thinking. By being able to build deep connections with those who are different from you because you understand the things that they love and enjoy, you create many unique networks which allows you to connect people in different groups. This makes you quite valuable, as Greene would say, because you have an extensive skill, which he feels is still not as important as an intensive skill, like being the best astrologer in the empire.
The fact is, the more irreplaceable you are, the more powerful you become.
When you become a necessary piece in a chain, getting rid of you makes it awfully difficult, and that's what Greene is instructing one to do in this rule.
Well, that's all I have for Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. And when you do, according to Greene, you're able to attain some power. Signing out from Athens, Greece. Take care and be awesome. Peace. Time to go check out some ruins.